Welcome everybody to What's the 411 News, and we have breaking news. The last survivor of the Tulsa Race Massacre has died. Miss Viola Ford Fletcher has passed away, and we are going to take a look at the survivors' fight for reparations due to the Tulsa Race Massacre. All right, so let's take a look.
Today has marked 100 years since the destruction of Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. For many years, the massacre had gone ignored by history.
And President Biden made history as he traveled to Tulsa to remember all that was lost back in 1921. CBS 2's Dick Brennan here in studio with more on that. Dick?
Christine and Maurice, the Greenfield district in Tulsa, Oklahoma was a thriving black community, sometimes called Black Wall Street, but a racist mob burned it down, massacred hundreds, a crime against humanity that's never really been truly recognized in this country properly until now.
Hell was unleashed. Literal hell was unleashed.
President Biden was the first U.S. president to come to the scene of a national shame, a horrifying chapter of American history that unfolded 100 years ago when an explosion of racial hatred and violence erupted in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
I think about it every day. I think it'll be something I'll never forget.
107-year-old Viola Fletcher, one of just 3 remaining survivors, still remembers the terror.
People running and screaming, and you could hear guns shooting and hear airplanes flying over.
The white mob killed some 300 black Tulsa residents and burned down more than 30 blocks of black-owned homes and businesses in the Greenwood district. Leslie Benningfield Randall is now 106.
I saw them break in people's houses and just destructive. That's all I saw, just destruction.
But history has been silent about the massacre, rarely taught in schools.
We do ourselves no favors by pretending none of this ever happened. We can't just choose to learn what we want to know and not what we should know.
The infamous day was marked around the nation, including in the Bronx, where lawmakers are introducing new resolutions on the federal, state, and city level to make June 1st Black Wall Street Day.
To never forget the Tulsa Race Massacre as one of the worst acts of racial violence and domestic terrorism in the history of the United States.
Before we continue, do we know, to my people up in the Bronx or in New York, period, do they have this in place already? Or was this just more talk?
Silent about the massacre, rarely taught in schools.
We do ourselves no favors by pretending none of this ever happened. We can't just choose to learn what we want to know and not what we should know.
The infamous day was marked around the nation, including in the Bronx, where lawmakers are introducing new resolutions on the federal, state, and city level to make June 1st Black Wall Street Day.
To never forget.
Was that put into effect June 1st, Black Wall Street Day in the Bronx? Does anybody know about that? Put it in the comments if you are aware if that has actually been put into effect. Or was that just all talk? You guys let me know. Put it in the comments. Put it in live now. We put it on the screen. All right? We'll get back to it.
The Tulsa Race Massacre.
Tulsa residents and burned down more than 30 blocks of black-owned homes and businesses in the Greenwood district. Leslie Benningfield Randall is now 106.
I saw them break in people's houses and just destructive. That's all I saw, just destruction.
But history has been silent about the massacre, rarely taught in schools.
We do ourselves no favors by pretending none of this ever happened. We can't just choose to learn what we want to know and not what we should know.
The infamous day was marked around the nation, including in the Bronx, where lawmakers are introducing new resolutions on the federal, state, and city level to make June 1st Black Wall Street Day.
To never forget the Tulsa Race Massacre as one of the worst acts of racial violence and domestic terrorism in the history of the United States.
Incredibly, in its aftermath, nobody was ever charged in the Tulsa massacre, and insurance was never paid out to black residents for the damage. But 100 years later, Leslie Benningfield Randall, a survivor then and now, knows that while a nation tried to forget, she can still help people remember.
Well, I guess it was God's will, and I think he might have provided a life for me so that I could tell others about it.
And yeah, I agree with her. God allowed them to live a long time so they can be out here and tell everybody about this before they passed away. I really believe that's what happened.
In Tulsa, the president proposed new funding to increase home ownership among African Americans and to help minority small businesses and entrepreneurs, but he did not talk about reparations that some residents want for Tulsa descendants. Christina Moraes.
And still no talk of reparations whatsoever, right? Back then. So let's take a look at this next video.
There are only 2 people still alive who remember firsthand what the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre was like. Lawyers for these lone survivors argued to the Oklahoma Supreme Court this week over the opportunities ripped away from them. The effects of the massacre still being felt today. CTV's Joy Melvin explains.
They are the last survivors of the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre. Leslie Benningfield Randall and Viola Fletcher, both 109 years old. They were just children.
Real quick, don't she look like she's in her early 70s or late 60s? Didn't she look like she was young for being in 100 years old? Viola Fletcher, Miss
Tulsa,
Fletcher.
Oklahoma massacre. Leslie Benningfield Randall and Viola Fletcher, both 109 years old. They were just children when they experienced the terror in 1921, when an angry white mob killed hundreds of black people, burning homes and businesses in Greenwood, Oklahoma, known as the Black Wall Street, one of the worst acts of racial violence in American history. Viola remembers it well.
People getting killed and houses, property getting destroyed with fire, and then someone in the neighborhood saying to leave the neighborhood, if not, we're going to kill all of the black people. It just stays with me, you know, it's just the fear that.
Leslie can still remember the corpses stacked on the street, telling a congressional committee in 2021.
It was like a war. White men with guns came and destroyed my community. We couldn't understand why.
A Tulsa judge dismissed their case for compensation last August, a stinging defeat that made philanthropist Ed Mitson so angry he gifted each survivor $1 million to help their legal fight.
What happened to them is irrefutable. It's undeniable. And it felt to me like the government out there was trying to run the clock out on these folks. I can't give them justice, but I can give them generosity.
Real quick, he said something very interesting. They was trying to run the clock out on them so they wouldn't have to give out money. Flipping that in reverse, Carolyn Bryant, they ran the clock out so she wouldn't be charged for Emmett Till's murder. You see what I'm coming from? Diabolical, to say the least.
Survivor $1 million to help their legal fight.
What happened to them is irrefutable. It's undeniable. And it felt to me like the government out there was trying to run the clock out on these folks. I can't give them justice, but I can give them generosity.
Appealing all the way to Oklahoma's Supreme Court, where lawyers for their survivors argued it's time to finally right a wrong. One justice even admitted,
when I went to high school, Greenwood was never mentioned. You're all to be commended for making sure that that will never happen again, that it will be in the history books.
But Oklahoma's High Court will only decide if the case will even go to trial. The last 2 survivors using their last days, hoping to see justice. Joy Melvin, CTV News, Washington.
And they should have gave them more than just saying, oh, yeah, you'd be listed in the history books. Yeah, also what would be listed in the history books is how you didn't give them reparations for that happening. That also would be listed in the history books. All right. Let's take a look at this last video, man.
The last two remaining survivors of the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921 are now moving forward in their fight for justice. Lawyers for 110-year-old Viola Fletcher and 109-year-old Leslie Benningfield Randall, who were just children at the time, announced plans to file a petition after the Oklahoma Supreme Court dismissed a lawsuit seeking reparations. In the last 103 years, no legal charges against any of the attackers have ever been filed, and no perpetrator has ever been held accountable, despite the Tulsa Massacre being considered one of the worst incidents of racial violence in U.S. history. ABC's Phil Lipoff is tracking this story and joins me now. Phil, what happened at this news conference today?
So, Terry, this news conference today lasted just about 15 minutes. A couple of the lawyers on this legal team spoke, obviously disappointed with the state's Supreme Court decision to dismiss this case, now calling on the Biden administration for help, looking for the Department of Justice to open investigation into that massacre. Toward the end of that media event, the granddaughter of one of these amazing women, these two survivors, said this.
This nation is watching. History is watching, and the very survivors who are depicted on this wall are crying out from the soil for peace, for peace. And this administration has the power to help them rest in peace. So we look forward to a swift decision, and as Mother Randall and the survivors stated, we have nothing to lose.
And Terry, they're saying they have nothing to lose because they've already gone to the Supreme Court in their state, and now they are asking for a DOJ investigation.
Yeah, it would seem that these are actual victims. These are not their descendants of victims. These are people victimized in this atrocity that happened. How did we get here? Tell us about this case.
Well, it is amazing. These two women, so they're the last two living survivors of this Tulsa Race Massacre that happened in 1921. They are 110-year-old Viola Fletcher and 109-year-old Leslie Benningfield Randall. They brought this historic case all the way up to the Oklahoma Supreme Court looking for reparations for that horrific destruction of what was a very thriving black community by this white mob of racists. This is 103 years ago now. The lawsuit was initially filed in 2020 and aimed to address the long-standing economic and racial disparities resulting from the wiping out of that community. The court dismissed their suit, saying that while their grievances are legitimate, they do not fall under the state's nuisance statute or support claims of unjust enrichment. That's the legal reasoning. That's what the court said. But in the end, upholding a lower court's ruling, and still no justice, as you point out, for the victims, these two living survivors, 110 and 109 years old, Terry.
Yeah, it's amazing. No justice, something wrong with the law there. Phil Lipoff, thank you very much.
So remember, the Democrats went out their way for the illegal immigrants and put in probably billions of dollars at this point. And nobody from the Democrats couldn't push to allocate any type of money to the survivors and their families of the Tulsa Race Massacre at all. So y'all keep that in mind, and it's real sad, man. Condolences go to the family of Miss Viola Ford Fletcher, who is the who was the last survivor of the Tulsa Race Massacre. She just passed away, and once again, condolences go out to her family. And just, y'all don't forget this. Don't forget it. This is What's the 411 News. And I'm out. Peace.